Good morning, everyone, and thanks very much. I'm going to talk to you this morning a little bit about our 100-year history, one of the great keys to our success, which has been innovation. And it's very appropriate to be here with the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School and one of the great innovators in Yash Gupta. What Yash did at USC to build that program and what he's doing not only for Hopkins to build a premier world-class business school, but what he's going to do for our city and our region, I have no doubt, will be a leading edge and leading way to build innovation and to help unlock the value in this business community. Before I get started, I'm going to give you my spin on innovation and our 100-year history, but I thought I would give you a little humor because I just read in the Washington Post every week they have a contest called the Style Invitational Contest. And last week's contest, they had a spin, put a positive light on things that came out. These are real headlines in the newspaper, and they asked the contestants to put a positive spin on these things. So one of these headlines was, Tom DeLay, former U.S. House leader, was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and the spin was, DeLay will be following in the footsteps of Mandela, Gandhi, and King. Another one was, Tom DeLay, U.S. House leader, sentenced to 3 years in prison, and the spin is, government again calls DeLay to serve. Another one that I thought was good, and appropriate for the transportation business, winter weather gripped parts of the South on Sunday, causing hundreds of flight cancellations. And the positive spin was, the number of complaints about security pat-downs at the Atlanta airport dropped enormously on Sunday. And just a couple more of these. This one, major delays from New York Avenue bridge work, and the spin was commuters linger after work in D.C. And finally, one I thought was very funny, Arlington lawyer gets a year in prison, and the spin is local attorney plans extended reunion with former clients. So, now I'll tell you about what we are doing in Veolia and what the key to our success has been. And one of those great keys, as I mentioned, is innovation. We, for the past 100 years, have been surviving and building a business and growing a business and thriving on the growth of cities. Our focus is about serving cities. And you know that around the world, our population continues to grow at a huge rate, particularly in the developing world. And we see this population of 3.3 billion will more than double over the next 20 years and will approximate nearly almost 9 billion people. And most of that growth will occur in cities. It's happening in India, it's happening in China, and we see it happening in the US, and particularly around water and the shortage of water, which will be a key factor. But for us in this business, we know that these are the challenges that cities are facing: sprawl, congestion, shortage of resources, and quality of life that is diminished by spending time in traffic. Just to show you a recent article, this article last week, February 2nd, entitled American Idle, talks about the time spent in traffic in delays, not normal commuting times, which in this region can be 2 hours a day of normal commute, but how much time is wasted sitting stalled on a highway, and what are strategies around solving this problem to improve the road speeds that we can have. What was particularly striking is this average of 34 hours a week, but what was surprising to me is not that Chicago, DC, and LA would average between 60 and 70 hours a week. But Baltimore is at 50 hours, not a week, 50 hours a year of stalled traffic in Baltimore. So this is an opportunity for us because necessity is the mother of invention. For us, this has been the key to our success, is solving problems in cities to grow our business. Yash talked a little bit about our business. Today, our business worldwide, we're the largest provider of passenger ground transportation, privately operated, with 2 billion passengers a year in 27 countries. And we operate, I think, the most unique and innovative systems in the world, whether it's the metro system that I had the privilege of riding in Seoul, Korea just a month ago, which looks like a palace in terms of the efficiency and in terms of the aesthetics of the system. It's an amazing system with innovation. We operate in Mumbai, which will be one of our fastest growing markets in India in terms of solving transportation problems that go back 50 years in terms of real challenges in terms of moving a large population. And we have a very large presence in France and Germany and Netherlands, operating all of our modes of services, rail, bus, and even our taxi services. For us in the States, I think what we do is quite unique and solving problems for cities that have serious cash constraints. We operate the largest contracted rail system in the country, which is the T in Boston. We run the commuter rail, which is about $300 million a year. We operate the largest contracted bus system in the country, which is Las Vegas. How many of you have been to Vegas recently? Number of you? So if you look on the Strip and you see those double-decker buses that operate up and down the Strip, we operate those. We operate what's called the Deuce, the Ace. We move the city of Las Vegas. And what's unique about that is Las Vegas has the highest fare box recovery of any system in the country. It's one of the few systems in the country where tourists will ride a bus. Tourists will ride a fixed route rail. They'll ride a train, they'll ride Amtrak, they'll ride a metro system. But normally tourists are afraid to get on a bus because they don't know where it's going. But in Las Vegas, they jump on the bus, they ride the bus, the double-decker, because it's almost another attraction in the city. Another unique area for us, in the way of innovation, has been to privatize New Orleans public authority. We are the public authority in New Orleans. What we did there was to help solve a major problem for the city post-Katrina, and that is to take over a failing system with the highest operating costs in the country and the lowest operating performance in the country, and a pension fund that was $20 million underfunded. And what we said to Mayor Nagin at the time is that this is a legacy for him to turn around this system and to help turn around the city. And in 5 years, we committed to replenishing that pension fund with savings that we would generate in operating that system, that we would find enough savings to pay the $20 million that they were short in the pension fund. And we are well on our way with tremendous innovation, including building enough credibility to get $45 million of federal funds to expand that iconic streetcar to the convention center. We operate in San Francisco, Phoenix, Seattle. We run the bus systems. And here in Baltimore, where we have our American roots that go back 100 years, we operate everything from the circulator to the taxi businesses and Super Shuttle. This is an example of our innovation, and I think it's really an example of back to the future. You know, when we were growing up, for many of us, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, it was the streetcars, it was the trolleys that were a very efficient way of moving folks. Not only was it efficient, it was environmentally beneficial. And this is a 100-year-old system right here in Hong Kong that I visited also in December. This system carries 300,000 people a day. What I hope to do there is to make this our sister city in terms of innovation and technology and running an old system that carries a lot of people and is very important to the community, and make this our sister operation to New Orleans, sharing advancement technology. We rebuild our streetcars in New Orleans, and we rebuild these streetcars here because no one else has the ability to, or the assets of 100-year-old cars to operate. But this is still a system that carries loads of people. That's the metro in Seoul. And this is Nice, where we operate a number of services. But this is a light rail system in France that is beautiful and tremendously successful. So, if we're going to get people out of their cars, what do we need to do? And what do we need to do? You know, we're all, particularly in the States, we're married to our cars. We have most of our investment in transportation is in building more roads. What helps to get people out of their cars? We have to provide end-to-end solutions, and we're the ones to look at this to say, not only the first mile, if we're going to get people on nice trains, if we're going to get people on nice buses, but when they get to their destination, how do they get the last mile? How do we solve the last mile? taxi cabs, bicycles, shared cars, car sharing, Zipcar. These are the ways we're going to get people to give up their cars, move into cities, have a higher quality of life, and improve the environment. And we operate all of these things, including ferries, Super Shuttle. We operate mobility solutions, including large call centers, and I'll talk to you about what's happening in technology. But this city is a perfect example. Imagine, as I told the governor recently, imagine if the MARC train was really a first-class system with great frequency. Imagine what would happen to home values here in Baltimore. Because if you had a MARC train that ran every 15 minutes, if you had a MARC train with Wi-Fi, we have Wi-Fi in Boston on the T. If you had a great service that you could ride all hours of the day and holidays, imagine what it would do for someone who commuted from Washington to Baltimore for 25 years. Imagine what that would do to this whole area in terms of property values and opportunities for other innovation. This is an example of our Vegas bus. And just a bit about our growth that I think is interesting. And for me, it was a real lesson learned. When we sold this business, we grew it. I came in 1976, and I'll share with you some of the challenges in just a second. But we've grown this business to just about, this year, we'll do a little more than $1.4 billion. We have 20,000 people in North America, of which 17,000 are employees and 3,000 are independent contractors who own their own business, which is a great opportunity to own a franchise in Super Shuttle or own a taxi cab, have a business, maybe even own a fleet of taxi cabs, because we have some who own as many as 20, 30 taxi cabs and operate in our company. And we operate these bus systems for Las Vegas, Phoenix, San Diego, rail in Boston, and then we are the ones to do the first, what's called delegated management, to privatize a system. I described New Orleans. We do that in Foothill, California, where we run the first fully electric bus, fast charge. After it completes a loop, it charges again. It's completely electric, not hybrid electric, but fully electric. And in Savannah, Georgia, we also do delegated management. This is a new business model for us. It's our retail business. It's where we control the price, we control the design of the service. We have 8 million passengers in 33 airports, and we have ExecuCar in 23 airports. And we realize that our strategy really in this business is to grow our market share in existing markets in those 33 airports, to go into new geographic markets. That about 80% of the travel is in the top 60 airports. There's 400 airports in the country. Top 60 airports generate about 80% of the travel. Our strategy is to go into the other 30 airports we're not in presently, and enter new verticals, using Super Shuttle, this brand, to serve people, universities, to serve people with disabilities, to serve sections of the city in a low-cost, efficient way of operating. And we already have one of those new businesses in New York. We are the leading operator of transporting airline crews for all major airlines at all 3 airports. Now, I started to talk a little bit about our history, and I'm going to share with you innovation over a period of 100 years, but it began in Baltimore. These are our taxi cabs at Penn Station, where for more than 80 years we've provided service to that station. And this fellow, W.W. Cloud, was a great innovator who founded the first registered yellow cab company in the country. Now, what was happening in 1909 was people were looking, again, living in cities, moving in cities, and wondering how they would get, if they didn't own a car, how they would get around, how you would serve hotels, and how you would serve the community. There's one thing to note. At that time, Henry Ford was manufacturing the majority of the cars in the United States, and you could have any color you wanted as long as it was black. And so what happened was W.W. Cloud saw that he needed to paint the vehicles a color that would distinguish them from the private car as a livery vehicle, as a for-hire vehicle. And as an innovator, he painted these cars yellow and called it Yellow Cab. That's how a Yellow Cab came about. And other yellow cabs sprung up around the country. shortly thereafter. They were not part of a franchise. They were individually owned. One great example of yellow cab was in Chicago with John Hertz, who before forming Hertz Rental Car had Yellow Cab of Chicago, and that's how Hertz became with a logo that's yellow. But this fellow grew this business and survived World War I. That view of the taxis at Penn Station was a promotion post-World War I to try to reinvigorate the business with a reduced rate campaign. This vehicle sits in our lobby. It's a 1937 Dodge. And what's important to know about this period in time, as we were about to enter World War II, no vehicles were manufactured during the war. For more than 6 years, no vehicles were manufactured. You will not find a 1943 or 1942 Dodge or Ford car manufactured in America, because during the war, all efforts were going to, in our steel mills here in Baltimore, in other manufacturing plants, everything was going to the war effort. And there was a shortage of labor, a shortage of everything, and so one had to be innovative. Predecessors in our company were great innovators in breaking the gender barrier and the color barrier because there was a labor shortage as a result of the war. And this is what happened in the early 40s. This is a great headline from the Baltimore Sun. You'd never see this today. Cab firm succumbs, hires first girl driver. So what happened is this company led the way in breaking the gender barrier, and shortly thereafter, in a very segregated city, our company led the way in breaking the color barrier as we integrated with great leadership, and this changed our business dramatically. What happened right after the war is our business is an early adopter, and we're going to talk about the impact of technology and more in just a minute. But this is an example of World War II technology. The Army had pioneered the use of the two-way radios in the war. And after the war was over, the two early adopters of these two-way radio systems were the police department and the taxi company. And in this case, it talks about 595% increase in phone order business as a result of using radios, two-way radios. For our business, if you wanted to call a cab before, a driver would have to sit on a stand, answer a telephone, and then go out and pick up a passenger, and this allowed them to cruise and be much more responsive. Now, we look around this area and we think about what kind of innovation took place in Baltimore. When I started in Baltimore in 1976, this is what the city looked like. A lot of boarded up houses. Houses were being auctioned off, in some cases given away for $1. People looked at this harbor and thought it was just a waste spot with a lot of pollution, unappealing, and most of the heavy industry, almost all of it, had left and gone overseas. And at that time, we saw people moving out of the city to the suburbs, and our business was on the way to bankruptcy. We were fortunate because at that time we had a lot of assets over a 60-some year history, but we were operating 50 taxi cabs. We were down from 300 taxi cabs in our heyday in the 50s during the peak of the post-World War II manufacturing boom in Baltimore. And I tell people that we weren't rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic, that people were stealing the deck chairs, because that's the environment that I came into when I was 21 years old. At that time, there was a TV show called Taxi, and my friends used to say, "Are you Louis?" This is the image of the taxi cab business around the country and in Baltimore. It was a depressing business and a depressing city at the time. But thankfully, I had two great role models. One was my father, who was a lawyer and law publisher, and who really preached the value of customer service and the values of ethics, business ethics, and the way we would solve these problems, recognizing that in our business, we had two customers, one in the front seat, the driver, and one in the back seat, and how we would serve those. At the same time, there was a great visionary, the best mayor in America, according to Fortune magazine, and William Donald Schaefer held a meeting here in Baltimore and said, "I've just been to Atlanta, and when I went to Atlanta, He said, the hoteliers greeted me and said, welcome to Atlanta. The cab drivers said, welcome to Atlanta. And he said, the waiters and waitresses said, welcome to Atlanta. And this is what we're going to do in Baltimore. We're going to build a tourist business. We're going to build tourism, and we're going to build a service economy because we're moving away from manufacturing, and this whole city is going to grow, and we're going to build a convention center, and we're going to improve the hotel business, but we need the frontline industries to help believe and market our city and serve our customers. And so we started to see that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and that we could grow our business, and that we could build synergy between our taxi businesses and potentially other businesses meeting customer needs. Now, one of the questions was, how do we grow our business in Baltimore, a relatively small market? Yash told you about our growth. When I started, we had about $1 million in revenues, and we were struggling. How do we grow this business? Do we diversify and go serve other customer needs in this market, in a relatively small market? Or do we take our taxi business on the road and start taxi cabs in Philadelphia, in DC, and in other cities? So I asked, what would you do if we had turned around the taxi business, we started to see Baltimore improving, as the overall environment was improving, we had this choice. Do we take the taxi business on the road, or do we diversify in this market? For me at the time, one was that we had customer demand in this market. We had hotels like the Hyatt that opened up and other businesses that wanted us to serve them, whether it was with limousines, whether it was with service for people with disabilities, school bus, or other needs. We started to, by being active in the community, we started to see customer demand across other forms of passenger transportation. At the same time, my management style was as a micromanager, and feeling that I needed to have a span of control, that I could see what we were doing. I had small children, and the resources were here, and I felt that we could leverage those resources and manage and diversify in this market. So that's what we did, and we became a pioneer in many respects. We privatized the city's trolley system, which today really is the downtown circulator. This was more than 10 years ago. Mayor Schmoke saw that this system was losing a lot of money. The city was in trouble financially and wanted to get rid of those trolleys. And so we were way before our time in that. We had the earliest paratransit business, one of the earliest in the country, before there was ADA law, before it was a mandate to provide service for people with disabilities. It was called an Elderly and Handicap Program, and we started that service. Those blue vehicles were a predecessor to Super Shuttle called Shuttle Express, and we became part of Cary Limousine, the world's best brand in the limousine business, to meet our customer needs there. So that's how we started to really diversify and grow this business. By 2001, we grew the business from $1 million in revenues to almost $50 million in revenues. That took a long time, and as I tell people, it was much harder to grow from $1 million to 50 than over the next 6 years, from 2002 to 2008, when we grew from 50 to $1 billion. That was easier than the first growth. We were acquired in 2001 by, at that time, what was known as Vivendi. You all know of Vivendi because of the media business, because of Universal Studios and Seagram's. But in fact, what paid for the media business was the old economy, water, waste management, energy, and transportation businesses that were the group that bought our business. Now, here's something that I think is interesting and shows you that some of these issues still haven't changed. In 2001, the headline was, French company views gridlock as gold mine. And you can still see that with that story from last week in the Wall Street Journal about the American Idol and traffic congestion, it's only gotten worse in terms of, and more opportune for our business to solve these problems. At that time, the chairman who was running the transportation business, who now runs our whole company, Veolia Environment, is the world's largest environmental company. It's a $50 billion a year business. And Antoine Frot said to me recently, You know, Mark, when we bought your company, we hoped we would grow from 50 to 500 million. That's what we saw as the size of the opportunity. And we more than doubled that in 6 years. So he said it's really impressive not only what our growth rate has been, but what the opportunities are in a very, very significant market in the States that's just now getting on to the importance of public transportation. We are not, in this country, accustomed to the importance of public transportation, whether it's Amtrak or whether it's local bus systems. It's not been so much on our radar. It started to become on our radar when gasoline hit $4 a gallon. And as we see gasoline prices getting back to that rate, it will be back on our radar very soon to understand the importance of public transportation. But for us, this growth is about 65% organic, 35% acquisition. We made a few key acquisitions. We acquired a major competitor in the transit business, ATC in Chicago. We acquired Super Shuttle as a platform for our retail business, but the majority of our business has been from winning contracts and convincing clients to outsource. Just the size of the market, as an example. In the US, the transit market is $20 billion a year in spend, of which 20% is contracted out, so $4 billion is contracted out. We still have $16 billion that is run by public authorities. In the rail business, it's a $20 billion market, 10% is contracted out, or $2 billion. And in the on-demand, the retail business, it's a $6 billion market, but all of it is private. It's all privately operated. So our strategy is to compete for share shift in what is contracted out, and just compete against our main competitors by providing a better value, and at the same time to convert publicly operated systems to private. And we have no delusion that it will all be converted, because it won't. But there are opportunities to help cities that are struggling financially and operationally to improve their systems by contracting out. We've improved our business with a strong focus on our management systems and technology, focused business strategy, and a very strong set of values that goes back 100 years. We have 3 divisions: rail, transit, and the retail on demand. This is really, it was a great day for me. We have Dwight Kynes here, who runs our taxi business and is the RVP for this region. And he organized this event. This was our 100th year anniversary here in Baltimore, founded in 1909. And we had the mayor with us and other dignitaries. And it was great to see that for many of our folks, our drivers and operators who have been with us for more than 30 years, to see the pride that the folks who represent us each day felt as being part of this company that plays such a key role in the city. And for us, staying power means having a very big role in the community. This is how we can last 100 years, by solving these problems and providing innovation. The Charm City Circulator is a system that was projected to have ridership about 2,300 a day. We've more than doubled that since the start of this service in Baltimore. It's almost 5,000 riders a day. Our paratransit business continues to grow with an aging population here in America and most Western countries, but the costs are very high in providing this service, and so we need to be thinking of new models to bring down that cost as we see more and more people depend on this type of service. Our taxi business embraces innovation and provides services that provide even higher ridership and make getting out of a car possible, and Super Shuttle I've described before. So just a look going forward, and then a quick discussion about the innovation and what's happening. First, to get people out of their vehicles, we have to help them navigate and understand mobility. And mobility today means looking at your smartphone as you're walking and figuring out how you're going to access various services, to make these services easier and friendly to work with. And whether you believe in climate change or you don't, you believe in the cost of gasoline, you believe in national security, you believe on the issues of our dependence on foreign oil. And so all of these solutions make sense in terms of us figuring out efficiencies, and you believe in reducing traffic congestion, which is a key factor in the quality of life. So we're working with cities to work on public-private partnerships, to look at investment. We know that real estate values, I gave an example of the MARC train, but we know real estate values grow significantly when real estate is built near a light rail system or a train system, and why not having a bus rapid transit system. That top left corner is our $1.3 million bus. Each of these buses is $1.3 million. It looks like a train, but it's a train on wheels that operates in Las Vegas. That's the MAX system. We talked about paratransit, and we know that more and more right now cities are struggling with significant deficits and pension fund challenges that will necessitate more innovation and contracting out. We will surpass the $2 billion mark within less than 5 years in our growth by providing this integrated mobility solution, by solving the problem of paratransit, and by converting more systems to delegated management model, as well as our on-demand business. For us, one of the keys has to be, in what is still to some degree a commodity business, is how do we drive down costs and add value? And one of the keys there, and it's certainly a key to lasting 100 years, is putting safety first and understanding that you have to have a culture of safety so that everybody is thinking about that on the front lines and all the way from the top. Now, here's something striking. This is from Morgan Stanley. This is the penetration rate of the iPhone iTouch, and I think what's impressive about this is to look first at the orange line, which is AOL. AOL, that we remember only a few years ago as being a high flyer, a company that was growing at an incredible rate. From Q1 to Q20, it grew from 0 to 20 million users, and it was considered one of our fastest growing businesses in the country. Now you take that green line and you look from Q1 to Q13, so a little bit over 3 years, and the iPhone, iTouch, iPad grew from 0 to 120 million users. What took AOL 5 years to go to 20 took 3 years to go to 120, 6 times faster. What does this mean to us in our business? What does it mean to you as you're thinking about how you're going to grow your business and what the impact of smartphone revolution is? Well, take a look at these numbers. The smartphone growth will grow from 250 to 620 by 2013. I tell the story that in my house, if the phone rings, my kids don't get up to answer it. Why don't they get up to answer it? Because they know it's not for them. They know that if anybody's calling them, it'll be on their cell phone or they'll be texted, but the landline is not for our kids. So what we see is a generation of people who are going to do their business. How many of you have an iPad? So you take your iPad, like I do, if you take it and you're reading on your Kindle and your iPad and you're reading in bed, and you want to search something, you don't go up to get onto your computer and get on the landline to dial out, no matter how fast your system is. You'll search something right off your iPad. So now you take your search to an iPad that you have with you, and it's easy to do. And now it's going to shrink into something that you're going to have with you all the time, whether it's your iPhone or any other application, which means you're going to do business on the move. And what does that mean? Well, I'll show you some implications to that. First, it means that we're going to be better, faster, cheaper, all of those things in terms of pricing and so forth. But it means we in our business need to think about how we're going to apply applications that make it easy to travel. And in this case, we give people information on their smartphones on the next bus, when the bus is arriving, schedule information, trip planning, ticketing, the ability to buy and pay with the phone. You'll see RFID tags on phones very shortly. It's already in most of Europe and the Far East. So you can just take your cell phone and put it by the fare collection device and pay with your phone without even having to log on. For us, it means developing applications for Super Shuttle and for our other businesses so smartphone users can use this. When we bought Super Shuttle 4 years ago, Of the 8 million reservations we did, 30% were on the internet through our partnerships with airlines and Expedia and others. 30% were internet. Now think about what that means to our productivity. Today, 50% are internet reservations, of which 5% are already smartphone. And we're going to see, and this is just something we released in this past year. This is a business we're an investor in, Taxi Magic. It's a business that enables folks to book taxi cabs all over the country, to book, to track the taxi cab, to see where your taxi cab is, to imagine you take the anxiety out of tracking your vehicle and seeing how soon it'll be there. And then when you get in that cab, you can pay for the cab with this. This is one of those new businesses. A competitor of ours just got a valuation of $60 million with $11 million investment from Benchmark Capital. And so you're seeing a lot of money flowing into this type of business. Part of the key is enabling our drivers and our frontline employees to better serve the public and to help them. These are new generation mobile data terminals. I talked to you about being early adopters with two-way radios, early adopters with painting the cabs yellow. Well, we were early adopters 10 years ago with mobile data terminals. This is the next generation that will take barcoding, that will take all Bluetooth scanning, improve routing. It enables our customers and our drivers to basically cashier in the vehicle. So someone has a voucher with a discount, it can be scanned right in the vehicle. And an article not long ago talked about travelers being able in Super Shuttle to get their boarding pass in our vehicle. That's something we can see, luggage delivery and other programs to serve the public. Now here's an article that really struck me in December, and think about the impact on your business or opportunity. This article was entitled, "Phone-Wielding Shoppers Strike Fear into Retailers." Big headline. And what it described was a 25-year-old young marketing exec going into a Best Buy store in San Jose, and it said that this young man, Tri Tang, found the perfect gift for his girlfriend, a $186 Garmin navigation device. And he looked at it, he said, that's what I'm going to get her. He pulled out his smartphone, he used an application called the Find. He entered in the information, you can scan it, entered in the information, and found the same device for $106 on Amazon. And he pushed a button and ordered it. Now, what does that mean to Best Buy? It means that their store has been converted to a showroom. And so you have to think about when people can do price shopping, not drive all around the city to see whether they can get a cheaper deal, not go home and search without seeing what they want to buy, but they can be in the store and decide what they want to buy. What does that mean to our business, and how is it going to change the market, especially when you see the penetration rates of smartphones? So for 100 years, one of the keys has been whether or not we embrace disruptive technology in our business. And Eric Schmidt from Google said technology is fundamentally disruptive. Clayton Christensen, who wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, talked about businesses that had the lead, like Sears and Roebuck, that had the first mail order business in the country, that had the first credit cards in the country, or digital equipment that had the first mini mainframes. And with the advent of more credit cards, Sears could have opened up their credit card and allowed shopping at places other than Sears. And they could have dominated rather than Amex or Visa or MasterCard. They could have had a credit card business that would have been second to none. They had the first mail order business, but they didn't want to disrupt their own business by doing that. And DEC didn't want to enter the PC market, even though that was what was coming, because it would lower the margins on the mini mainframes, and instead they lost out, and neither of those businesses, the Sears Tower is now the Willis Tower in Chicago. This is an example for us of the impact on our business in terms of technology and technological change. Our client in Boston, the T, decided on November 14th to allow the use of real-time data, a feed, to look at 5 bus lines, just 5 bus lines, and said, we're going to open it up so anybody can use this data and see what they want to do with it. Within 1 hour, a developer integrated the trial data into Google Earth to show real-time locations of the buses. Within 2 days, a developer integrated the trial data into a free, easily accessible web page where T-riders can track the buses from any internet-accessible computer. Within a week, a developer built a desktop application that displays the countdown information for the rider's favorite stop. Within 2 weeks, a developer built a simple web application that displays the bus countdown information without the need for a map. Within 5 weeks, a developer built an iPhone and Android apps that integrate the real-time trial data. The apps cost 99 cents. Within 8 weeks, a developer built a system that delivers the real-time data by text message to any mobile phone. Within 8 weeks, developers launched more apps, included free applications. And so what it means is that there are a lot of people working on this and thinking about either how they're going to be involved in the community because it's interesting to them to solve these problems, or how they can make money doing this, because this is a new way of a revolution. And I think about this social revolution and what it means to our business and say, so what are the implications from Egypt to Execucar, which is one of our brands? Who controls the message? When we think about what we used to have as a one-way communication of our brand, of our service, and we controlled the message. And today, bloggers and others can get out there and talk about service and what happened. There's a big one on United, United lost my luggage, that circulated with 8 million viewers reading about a piece of lost luggage and how bloggers and others are controlling the message. The implications for an R&D department is we used to spend a lot of money on focus groups and study what consumer behaviors are, when today you can find out those consumer behaviors real time. People are telling you immediately how your service is, what they liked, what they didn't like, and so you can do away with spending money on R&D in terms of focus groups if you pay attention and figure out how to harness this information. But it also has the effect of what I call the snowball effect, that if you don't harness it earlier, if somebody builds a site called Dell Hell, which they did when an unsatisfied or dissatisfied consumer didn't like the computer he bought from Dell or the service, and puts up a site, and if Dell doesn't react quickly and address the issues in a transparent manner, you can get snowballed. The last is the pace of change and what we're seeing. I spoke with on a panel a couple weeks ago with the founder of the X Prize, and he talked about his idea for the X Prize to sponsor a $10 million competition for a race to space privately, for a spacecraft that could reach 60,000 miles, return to Earth, and go back up within 7 days, privately operated, privately funded, and it would have to carry 3 people. He said he got the idea because there was a contest to fly across the Atlantic solo that Lindbergh won. And when Lindbergh won it, I didn't realize this, that there was a sponsor of a $25,000 prize of a fellow who was a busboy in New York who became very successful, built a hotel, owned a hotel. He was French. And he decided that there would be an opportunity one day to have people flying back and forth from Europe to the States, and it would help grow and develop his business. So he wanted to promote more air travel and decided to sponsor this prize of $25,000, which would be an equivalent in those days today of about $5 million. What he learned was that not only did Lindbergh, who was perceived to be crazy and one of the really underdogs in this competition, but there was more than $400,000 spent around the world to try to win the $25,000, that there were an enormous number of competitors to try to win this prize. In the case of this X Prize of $10 million, there was more than $120 million spent to win the $10 million. Burt Rutan won, and Richard Branson licensed his technology. But there was best of class from all of this technology that was developed. You could take the best ideas from these different innovations and apply it. So when we look at what's happening and the speed at which things are changing, you know, last night Watson beat the other two contestants on Jeopardy. I understand this morning that there were 30 questions. The other two contestants who were champions, top champions who were selected to compete, got 5 answers out of the 30. So you can see what is happening in terms of the implications of robots, of smart programs, and what does it mean for us? Well, few last observations. One, these social networks are not things, they're behaviors. This is what Tim Brown talks about from IDEO. There's the development of the creator economy, creator community, which means that how does Google doesn't charge for searches? Because we create value for Google. We create a string of where we search and how we search, which creates value for them. And what happens in the effect of cities like Cairo. We see moving people in mass, whether it's Groupon or whether it's whole cities and communities. And I've talked about the X Prize. When we were just talking to a group of hoteliers panel where the X Prize founder was, they said the question to me was, what are the implications for travel in your business and how does it affect us in the hotel industry? What does it mean for us? And I said, how do we now open up our markets to people from China so people will come to the States in mass? Because they're traveling mostly, most Chinese who are now finding the resources are traveling a lot within China, but can we get those folks to travel in large numbers to the States? And I said, listen, let me tell you a story. For me, even though I sold our business to a French company and have worked with them for 10 years, I don't speak French. But I took my wife to the south of France and we're driving in a car last year, and we rented a car. I took a Garmin device and I had the device speaking to me in English and telling me where to go in English. My wife was telling me where to go, but that was in a different language. But in any case, I felt very comfortable to drive around France. In the old days, you would have had a map. You would have been nervous about where to go and how to navigate this. Now imagine a Chinese person steps off of a plane who doesn't speak English. And the first thing they do is they look at their smartphone, and it looks at where they are, and it says, walk 100 yards out, and your driver will be waiting, or you can get on this bus. It's speaking to them in their language and telling them where they are, how to navigate, and making them feel safe, making the connections from the car to the hotel to their office that they want to go or where they want to go, and how to pay for it and have it all completely automated. The last examples of innovation that I think are major for our business, one was converting post 9/11. Our business was shut down. Our on-demand retail business was shut down for 3 days nationwide with 9/11 when airports were closed. And we had to adapt to this and change the business model from employee drivers to owner-operators or unit franchisees. And what we saw by this dramatic change is driver turnover dropped from almost 200% to 12%. Annual wages went up, driver productivity went up, and profitability went up, even though the gross revenues shrank because we now didn't take credit for all the fares. The drivers got to keep 75% of the fare, but what we saw is the profitability go up, way up, and stability in our business. I've talked to you about this change in New Orleans. If you talk to Mitch Landrieu, the mayor now, or Mayor Nagin, he would say what we did in the first 100 days to introduce service, and we funded buses called the Little Easy. New Orleans is the Big Easy. We put buses that we paid for to serve the 9th Ward where Brad Pitt is building homes, the neighborhood that was completely destroyed by Katrina. And we put buses on, small buses, not these 40-foot buses, but small buses to serve neighborhoods that had no service, private investment, new look, new brand, and then we built the credibility to get that funding to expand that streetcar system. This is an example of what's happening in cities and where change is occurring. This was called a successful fiasco. It was poorly executed, but a great idea, and it will be replicated now in Pittsburgh, LA, Indianapolis, and other cities, which was privatization of the parking meters. It was poorly executed because at the same time they were privatized, the rates went up, and the system failed in terms of the electronics. But once it was fixed, people understood how to use it, and the mayor and others said, listen, we were going to raise the rates anyway because the rates were disproportionately low. But it's another example of what's going to happen as cities look to solve problems and bring in innovation and dollars. So finally, for us, it's about meeting customer needs. It's about looking at new business models to solve problems, new technology. We are in the transportation business across many modes to get people out of their car. It's about working with labor. About 90% of our bus and rail systems have labor, and it's working with labor to think differently and not to forget that we're part of a community, that if we're going to do business and improve a community, we better be involved in the community, and we look forward to a great future. Thank you.